Okay, good morning, people. And we need to continue with where we had stopped yesterday with regards weather forecasting. I will share my screen now, and with a bit of revision, I would say what functions do actually, what functions does weather forecasting help us with? Okay, in fact, this slide which shows the IMD, that's India Meteorological Department. What are the services that they provide to right from general public to government official, general public in the sense they do give you the day-to-day issues as far as temperatures, rainfall, etc. is concerned. They issue special signals for fishing, fishermen, trekkers, mountaineering. Flood forecasting is always there. Agriculture, in fact, they give uh, farmers a regular uh, update on localized weather conditions. Then aviation is again, aviation industry requires outputs and in rather inputs from the IMD. Then community projects, port officials, offshore drilling, defense services. In fact, these are specialized. You could go into many multiple uses within general public and so on and so forth. Post which we went into say the mythology of understanding with the various weather gods and so on and so forth. And then we went into uh, the Indian as well as the Greek and the Japanese gods. And then we come to come back to how now that's of course the story part of it. And then we come to how we can speak about how is this information about weather forecasting. Obviously, today's weather forecasting is much advanced. It uses a lot of technology. Loads and loads of money are invested in forecasting and to make it as precise as possible, basically because a lot of economy, particularly for a country like India, you'll see that even if you learn economics, in one of the initial chapters of economics, introductory chapters of economics, in Indian conditions, you would have a statement saying that the Indian economy is the gamble of the monsoons. Okay, basically, it's seriously dependent on the monsoons, and as a consequence, it becomes equally important that we need to understand, and the investment gets justified as far as weather forecasting in Indian context is concerned. But you'll see that there has been a significant revolution, I would say, as far as study of weather forecasting is concerned from previous times to the present times as such. From medieval and ancient times, you'll see that the information, okay, collection of data was not there. It was basically based on observations. Most of these forecasting was based on observations, and in these observations were noted down in the form of lores. What is lore? Lore is a body of traditions and knowledge on a subject or held by a particular group. They pass it from person to person and from word of mouth, from one individual to the other, and so on and so forth. Okay, so basically, because you did not have a print media then, and possibly there was a need for secrecy. Okay, as far as that particular aspect is concerned, who knows? But then this is how lores came up. Okay, in the sense that information, there could be various lores. In the sense, you could have lunar lores. Now, what exactly does a lunar lore mean? Okay, lunar is of course related to the moon. So you'll see that uh, it's believed that a lot of weather phenomena is related to the phases of the moon, and you'll see that the full moon, okay, and the new moon, okay, Purnima and Amosha, okay, you'll see that many a times the cycles of the dry spells of the monsoon or the wet spells of the monsoon are very normally related to this. Say, for example, if I could give you a very an example which is used even today, is that the fishermen in Konkan, particularly fishermen in the Konkan region, they take back to fishing. Okay, during the monsoon it is closed, but they take back to fishing after what is called as the Narali Purnima. This coincides with the festival of Raksha Bandhan in India. So it's after that that these now the reason, the logic being that possibly the say the dynamics of the Arabian Sea, they get a bit weaker after that particular phase. That's the Narali Purnima, as it is called. I forget the month in which normally it falls. Obviously, it will not match with the English calendar as such, but the lunar month that it falls, it's, I think it's before Shravan, or it falls within Shravan, the month of Shravan as such. So possibly around that. So and this is just one example which tends to be followed even today, even with all the technology that you have around you. It's something that is followed as such. Then you'll see that. Of course, this the second example has a significant amount of scientific base behind it. Also, the tides, the tidal cycle. Okay, it's related to the moon as well. Okay, and that's basically because we know that tides are associated with the gravitational force of the moon and the sun in conjunction at some times and in opposition in other at other times. As then you have color lores in the sense that many parts of the country, you have typical people who could look at the sky and, given the sky color and the cloud patterns, could tell you that whether it is going to rain, whether it is going to rain very hard, whether it is not going to rain at all for some time to come. These are color lores. Okay, so and all these happen over a period of time. Okay, they are tried and tested. Okay, and that's why you'll see that it's not every day that a person looks at the sky and would say that, okay, no rain today, no rain today. There are going to be certain conditions which come up in such a way that, given a particular law, you could identify a particular, or you could forecast a particular condition as such. Then you have animal laws. Okay, you see that peculiar animals start behaving in a peculiar way with regards, say, peculiar earth phenomena. It could be related to volcanoes, it could be related to earthquakes, it could be related to heavy rain, it could be related to change of season, it could be related to change of cycle. In fact, the fishing activity that we were referring to, is it has been observed that during the monsoons, fish in the Arabian Sea and seas around India, in fact, take to breeding. Okay, so and that's another reason why fishing is not taken up in the monsoon season. Not only is the sea very harsh, but it's very difficult to. In fact, it's to stay away from the breeding period of the fish as such. Then you have various crustaceans, various types of crabs. They will shed their shell before a particular seasonal thing. Okay, after a particular thing. The same thing goes with floral aspects also. You'll see that, and for this, those who have been to the Pune University campus will vouch by me that there is this peculiar type of species of trees which is found all throughout the campus of the Pune University. In fact, this is not an local species, it's an exotic species which was brought by the governor then from Australia. It's a peculiar type of an semi-arid tree. Now, he was very impressed of the fact that on one occasion that he visited Australia, that tree was absolutely barren without any leaves, and the other occasion that he went, you'll see that it was lush with leaves, very green leaves as such. The reason being that these trees are grow in semi-arid conditions, and the moment they have watery conditions as such, they could, in fact, they sprout a new foliage of leaf cover onto them. की थोडासा जरी पाऊस पडला उन्हाळ्यामध्ये, पहा की तुम्हाला विद्यापीठाचं कॅम्पस अतिशय भकास वाटतं, आणि एखादी जरी सर येऊन गेली पावसाची, मी पावसाळा म्हणत नाही, एखादी सर येऊन गेली, 2-3 दिवसात तुम्हाला लगेच हिरवी पालवी फुटल्यासारखी दिसते. Okay, that's something that you could observe in the university campus itself. That's the floral lore as such. So looking at that type of floral lore, you could say की बरेच दिवस पाऊस झालेला दिसत नाहीये. किंवा आत्ताच पाऊस होऊन गेलेला दिसतोय, and so sort of. Okay, fruiting of trees, flowering of trees, all of this is associated with uh, uh, I would say weather conditions, if not climatic conditions, because as we said yesterday, cotton requires a uh, dry weather. Okay, so you see the biological or the evolutionary logic behind this is going to be the fact that every species is going to want its progeny to be protected. Okay, and for this protection, the species over a period of time studies the harshful weather conditions and the favorable weather conditions, and they will say accordingly evolve to adjust their sprouting of fruits, flowers to that particular time, which is going to be the best season for that particular trees say reproduction, or I would rather say increase in the number is concerned. Okay, then atmospheric conditions also, you have very atmospheric laws. As I said, it's not only the color of the sky, the type of the clouds also. If you have a halo, you'll see that a halo is developed around the sun or the moon, whichever celestial body is in the sky at that particular point of time. Normally, it is associated with cyclonic conditions also, not necessarily every time, but then when in association with cyclonic conditions. So such atmospheric conditions are captured as lores, and they are passed through generations, and it's basically a word of mouth from one generation to the other, and they keep it in their mind. Okay, and obviously they utilize it to their best of their thing. Okay, now as far as procedures of uh, weather forecasting is concerned. Okay, in fact, before we go into the present and the latest procedures of weather forecasting is concerned, once again, a small aspect of visiting into the history of weather forecasting, I would rather say. A more after lore, you will see that in fact weather forecasting started getting more predictable only when we started having these scientific instruments. Okay, the thermometer to start with, and then the barometer to follow. Okay, and people realized that with low pressure you could be expecting rains, and with high pressure you would certainly not be expecting rains as such. Higher temperature evaporation rates, lower temperature evaporation rates are going to be different. Around 17th century, using this information, you'll see that the first wind map uh, was developed by Halley. It was in 1686 to be more precise. As such, he gave the wind patterns of the world based on these observations as such. And in fact, uh, I would say the father of weather maps could be Ballot, Ballot. 1852, he gave us our first weather map. Uh, and we are going to see what weather maps are, because that in fact is one type of weather forecasting which we are going to see. And then you'll see that during the Industrial Revolution, as people traveled farther and longer, they required communication networks, giving rise to two revolutionizing communication instruments, that's in telephone and telegraph. Around 1840s, the telegraph came in, and the same thing were used to store and more so to transfer, because why was the speed of movement of data very important, or even today why is the speed of movement of data very important today? Because we all know that climate is something which is very dynamic. Consequently, weathers also are going to be very dynamic systems. You could have one thing at a particular point of time, you could have other at a particular point of time, within a day, within a span of a couple of days, within a week, within and that's why by the time you note down a particular change, you pass that particular change to particular institution, and that particular institution starts working on that. It obviously could have consumed a lot of time, and because of that you lose precious moments. As a consequence, the faster the data is collected as well as transferred, the better and more reliable become the weather forecasting systems. Okay, as a consequence, you'll see that telephone and telegraph started playing an important role. the amount of data transferred gradually increased from one region to the other. And this led to, because this data increased, we then started, we felt that we need to have organizations or institutions who would store this data and work on this data as such. So in the 19th century, you have one such institution coming up in the United Nations, and by 1860, you had the Smithsonian Institute, which came up in the United States as such. Okay, while this was happening in UK and America, a load of network of forecasting centers started coming up in different parts of the world. Of course, India was not to be left behind. 1878, you had the India Meteorological Department established, and you'll see that in 1887, that's within 9 years from its establishment, daily weather reports started coming out of this thing as such. Okay, then during the 19th century, okay, you'll see within the 19th century, more research went with all this data. Obviously, more research went into temperatures, more research went into pressure conditions, and temperature and pressure. Obviously, we have seen this in the processes of climatology, that temperature and pressure are going to give you wind systems, okay, and that's what is going to carry the moisture. So that is what completes the cycle, and the study of this started way back in the 19th century itself. Okay, but for a significant period of time, all through this was happening, all the data was basically coming from the land points only. Okay, it was realized very soon that this data is not going to be enough, basically because land surfaces are going to be occupying what, only 25% of the total global surface, leaving 75% of the surface for water bodies. And because of that, uh, there was an every chance that the forecasting could have gone haywire. And as a consequence, the need that we should have data collection centers on water bodies also. As a consequence, ships, etc., which were on a constant move on oceans, were fitted with these instruments. And as a consequence, they too started collecting data on a very large scale, and of course transmitting it to these original institutes through telegraph, telephones, and other issues. Okay, so now we had a complete network. Okay, and with the help of radio systems which started coming up in the first 2 decades of the 20th century, okay, you could transfer data not only on land from one point to other, you could get data from what is happening and at a very fast pace, but let me tell you, from ocean surfaces as such. In spite of all these things, you'll see that it came to be there were these, I would say, is the development of various types of instruments that tended to be used through the period of time. As I said initially, the telephone, and then you have the telegraph, okay, and then you have the radars. Okay, you have, this is another type of a radar itself. Okay, this is with particular reference to clouds only, and this is called as balloon sounding. Okay, if you uh, must have seen a clip that I had posted on our group as to what balloon sounding is all about. This is, of course, the balloon which is made up of latex. Latex is pure natural rubber, and the elasticity is much, much higher than synthetic rubber as such. And this is obviously the sensor which collects temperature and other data, and it keeps on sending it real time to some institution. And I've seen this in IITM, the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology in Pune itself. It's on Pashan Road. Uh, this is a very large balloon, and it's, as I said, it's made up of the best quality of latex rubber. And we were told that this whole experiment, every experiment at that period of time, that's around a couple of years ago, costed around 50,000 rupees. And it was every Wednesday that they let out this balloon sounding as such. Okay, the rubber has to be of a very good quality, basically, because it's filled with hydrogen, and once it starts ascending its height, what actually happens is the pressure decreases, so it starts blowing up. Okay, a normal balloon obviously will burst off. Then you see that this being a good quality rubber, it keeps on expanding. because the pressure inside is more and the pressure outside goes on decreasing. And we were told that what we were seeing in front of us was a balloon which was blown up into a dimension of 1 meter in diameter, and they said that it goes to a diameter of about 3 to 4 meters by the time it goes up, and at a particular point of time it bursts open. But by that time they do collect a significant amount of information that they require. So all these instruments tended to be used continuously throughout this period. And it was balloon and balloon basically came into contention when it was realized that land and water data, water surface, land surface data and water surface data was not giving appreciable uh, results. And as a consequence, the third element came into picture, and that completed the whole scenario, and that's atmosphere. Okay, because here is where the rain and weather phenomena were coming from. So study of the atmosphere became very, very important, and you'll see that towards 1940s, they started using radars and balloon sounding, etc. 50s, 60s, we started sending very primary rockets. Later on, we transferred into satellites as such. Okay. However, with balloon sounding, with short distance rockets, with satellites, now of course, huge amounts of data tends to be collected and transferred back onto the surface as such. But then what do you do with this data? You need to analyze this data, and of course, you are going to require instruments which are going to help you as far as analyzing this data is concerned. And here comes in computers. So computers now could store in huge amounts of data into them. And while we were doing this with computers, eventually we needed computer programs which would work on this data. So statistical and mathematical models were used for, say, the analysis of this data. And day by day, yes, there are still complexities, but day by day, we are moving inch by inch towards getting more precise information as far as weather conditions are concerned as such. Okay, TIROS, TIROS-1 was the first of the meteorological satellites launched by the US, first of its type in 1960. Okay, and of course nowadays you find some country at some point of time is regularly sending up satellites with various types of sensors fitted onto it to keep on say monitoring the atmospheric conditions, etc., to such an extent now that all this is also being labeled as space junk. There's so much of satellites launched, and what happens is that once the use of that particular satellite is done, okay, getting it back into the orbit and onto the surface is a very costly affair. So what governments do, what countries do, is basically uh, say if this is the space and you have placed, okay, you require your satellite to be placed here as such, and now this satellite is has exceeded its use, and you have new technology. So what they do is they just remove this from this point, and they will place another satellite at this particular point so that it starts functioning. Okay, now this removed satellite keeps on staying there in the space and moving around with the other things, and that's happened with a lot of countries, and that's called as space junk. That's a serious problem again. So it's not only that we have polluted our planet Earth, but you'll see that we have polluted uh, space around us also. Anyway, coming back to the fact that what are the procedures of for weather forecasting? I've given you a fair idea of what is the data collected, and then let us look into the procedures. For forecasting of weather has now become a science, and that's why you'll see that there needs to be a system, there needs to be a procedure, and that needs to be followed as such. How does it go? Okay, the various steps in it include recording of weather data, which includes what? It includes temperature, it's going to include pressure, it include wind speed, including direction of the wind, and of course cloud forms, humidity, precipitation, visibility, storms are the basic thing. There are many things which are nowadays being added to this list in peculiar studies, in the sense as far as uh, Indian monsoon is concerned. The monsoon model has a list of parameters on which the progress of the monsoon is identified. Okay, so you record this, then you collect the weather data from weather recording stations. You have weather recording stations at different places and different parts of India, world. Okay, on land, as water, on water surfaces, from everywhere it needs to be collected. Then it needs to be transmitted. Okay, and all of this has to happen very fast. Okay, the weather data tends to be transmitted to weather stations, to subcenters, and then after being transmitted it is collected and then it needs to be compiled. Okay, you'll see that data in front of you is of no use unless and until you are going to use it in the proper sense. To use it in the proper sense, you have to arrange it in the proper sense as such. Okay, say for example, say you don't immediately start studying precipitation because precipitation is dependent on humidity. Okay, you immediately don't start going into humidity. Basically, precipitation and humidity are dependent on cloud forms. These three are dependent on the direction of the wind and the wind speed. Wind is dependent on the gradient of pressure. Okay, so where to start, where to end, what to extract at a micro scale, what to extract at a micro scale needs to be very clear with the researcher. Otherwise, your forecasting is going to be haywire. Um, all this obviously starts with temperature. So temperature data is going to be very important. Uh, the 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 local temperatures, the average temperatures, the mean daily temperatures, the mean monthly temperatures, the variations of these temperatures, the anomalies that you may have on a particular day, on a particular month, regarding temperatures, etc. Then, once having this, the plotting of the weather data on maps and the weather records into synoptics. I think there is some mistake here. Plotting of weather data into maps and then the weather records into synoptic charts. We're going to go into what synoptic forecasting is about. Once you have plotted, okay, then you need to interpret, you need to analyze this weather charts and maps with the help of computer programs and various types of modeling. And once you are through with all these things, final forecasting of weather in and numerical modeling as such. Okay, and once you have done with this, you once again start go. This is probably for a day. Okay, this should take a day. Actually, it happens very fast nowadays. It is happening real time. Okay, while it is being recorded at some place in some weather data somewhere, it's immediately parallelly being transmitted and compiled and in fact plotted into weather records and analyzed, and final outputs are being given on various computer programs. Okay, so all this is a recent development, I would say. So these are the procedures as far as weather forecasting is concerned. These are some older, some new instruments, and day by day, newer type of sensors are coming in as far as the study is concerned. And as I said, that we are deep into satellite meteorology now, and you'll see that it is these sensors on board of these satellites which keep on sending us information about various conditions of the weather in the tropospheric layer, otherwise the ozone, etc. You have specified satellites for specified purposes, studying certain sections of the atmospheric layers. Okay, of course, most of them, I would say 90% of them, focus on the troposphere. That's the lowest one of them. There are some specialized which study the ozone layer depletion, etc. And then the thermosphere, and so to say the mesosphere, etc. Okay, coming to the methods of forecasting. As far as the methods of forecasting are concerned, there are three methods of forecasting. The synoptic forecasting method, which was in prominent use until 1950s. The use of these synoptic forecasting methods has subsequently gone down. Recently, you'll see that nowadays it's used as a practical purpose. These weather maps are being used in practicals nowadays. Okay, so beyond that, in fact, it is high time that they constitute a very small part of the practicals, and we move to the other types of weather around us as well. Um, The first one is synoptic forecasting. It is this one. And what we do in the whole process is the fact that we collect all the information, and this information is plotted area wise. And you'll see that you must have come across these India daily weather reports. This is what 1992, 1st June 1992. Because now see, they have the lunar calendar also written here, and on basic information, or say logic, what you could say this, because this is June, you'll see that you have a darker amount of darker. Now it's hard to believe that whole of India would be under dark covers. Probably in the process of changing it into color, they have just shaded the sky conditions. But I am of not of a belief that all these dark conditions would be showing dark clouds. Okay, certainly not. But then these lines running here and there, these are what is this weather map daily. Now these are showing, I would say, yeah, these are showing isobars. Okay, you have a low pressure here, okay, 1002, and then you have the 1004, and you have another low pressure which is off the coast of Kerala. And this obviously will indicate that you could have some rains here, you could have some rains here. And you'll see that the dark dots have some tips, and you'll see that along the tips, this tips is nothing but wind speeds. Wind speeds are higher along the coastal areas, you'll see here, because come June, and you'll see that the coastal environment significantly change, and you'll see that these tails are there mostly with these coastal dots. You don't have much in when you go into the interiors as such. So all this information is plotted. You have maps on this, and then this is the NLM, okay, normal line for monsoon. I think I forget the long form of it, and I can't remember it right away. But that is what it means, NLM. You could just search for it and post the detailed information on the group as well. Then you have numerical or quantitative methods of forecasting. That you gather all the numbers that you gather are posted at a particular point, and having posted them, you try to grade it up, and you put it in a pixelate format. Okay, you'll see this. Okay, and they will give you shades, and of course you have these values of very high and very low numbers. And high values obviously mean something, low values also mean something. They are colored in that particular way, so you can have a very clear picture of what is happening based on the data. This is more statistical method, quantitative method. There's a lot of information that goes into, but you'll see that this also has its limitations. So we go into the third method, statistical method of forecasting, where you'll see the scale changes, and you'll see that you actually go into further pixelating the information. Every pixel has a value, and then you'll see that I took this from the net, and that's why I would not be able to give you the details of what this actually means. It reads climate, so possibly it speaks about higher temperatures, lower temperatures, P95. Again, not very sure what all this is, and but this is how information is posted onto it, and these are basically methods of weather forecasting. The details of this obviously can be got in from the book on climatology by Savinder Singh. By the way, tomorrow you will not have your class, and next week we'll go to the nature and scope. Okay, I want you all to just go through everything that we have done, and let us have the Wednesday lecture as a discussion between us as to what have you learned out of climatology. What are the various processes? What do you think is important? Is forecasting possible? What is stability? What is instability? Unanswered questions that you may have in that whole process. So type of revision will follow only after we have done the basics, the nature and scope of climatology, the branches, the scale at which climatology is done. What is tropical climatology? Why is tropical climatology so very important? Is it important with reference to India? Is it important with reference to other uh, countries in the world, and so on and so forth? Okay, so that's all for me at this particular time. From me for today. I'll just end the show and I'll come back. Um, Please let me know if you have any queries with whatever we have done today. I think Preetham has already shared the this the what soft copy of this book, and let me tell you that as far as weather forecasting is concerned, it starts on page number 411, and you all that I have been speaking is all through the book, the chapter here as such, and then methods of forecasting start from 421 onwards, and it goes into till 427. Okay, so your syllabus includes any two types of weather forecasting. We're not going to go into the details of that. You just need to know any two of them. What exactly does synoptic mean? Okay, and I prefer you do note on.
Sir, your mic has got muted.
Sorry. Yeah. I hope you got the page numbers from here, or I was not audible when I was speaking about that.
Yes, sir, we have heard the page numbers, but
Yeah. I don't know how it got muted, but yeah. So towards the later pages, you have the methods. You can read once through it. I don't want you all to go into it word by word. Read through it, whatever you understand out of it. Write it down in around 100 words. That is one method of forecasting. Don't go into the details. What happens this? What happens that? A basic thing in around 100 words of note is 100 to 150. 100 words is easier to write. You can increase it up to 150, maximum 200. Don't go beyond that, because then recollecting it becomes an issue once again. So that is for me, from my side. Uh, we have literally completed the whole syllabus. Just I would request you all to go through the syllabus once again, just in case I have forgotten any point at some point of time. I may have said that, okay, we'll do this at a later point of time, and then I've not done this at all. And of course, for the first topic, now that we understand climates and the dynamics of climatology, meteorology, to a significant, I won't say we have understood it all. We need to study it further, the processes, etc. We need to establish linkage. We, in the sense now, you as students need to establish linkages between the chapters that you have done and we have been doing. You can visit the lectures. I have posted literally every lecture that I have delivered. I have posted it on my YouTube channel. What I can suggest you is you make a slide of in your in PowerPoint presentation. You copy the links of those lectures, okay, the YouTube links. You paste the link, and if you see what I had done, I don't know whether you have noticed this, but what I do is when I copy links from YouTube directly to show you all, I copy the link and then I write a brief discussion of that particular uh, um, lecture, a brief discussion. What is that lecture about? Then you can what you can also do is the total length duration of that particular lecture. It's 48 minutes, 51 minutes, 56 minutes, 1 hour 5 minutes. Please write it down there. And while you trace it first time, okay, while you trace it first time, okay, you are revising things. Another thing that I would like you all to do is की काही गोष्टी आपल्याला त्या परत रिवाइज करायच्या असतात. हे महत्त्वाचं आहे, हे मला परत करायचं आहे. What you can do is you can note down the minutes at which that particular thing is discussed in that particular um, section of that particular lecture. So what you can do is you can literally make one slide of one lecture, the title, the subtopics that were covered in that, what are the important points, what are the important slides, at what minute and what second does that particular come, so that it doesn't, you don't waste much time going through this. And many a times you'll see that we just go ahead and behind. Taking pains once and noting down the minutes at which that particular thing occurs in that lecture is going to save you a lot of time. There is one more way to do that. Okay, you'll see that YouTube offers you you go into settings, and in settings you have playback speed. So at times when it gets faster for you to understand, what you can do is you decrease the speed. Normally, तुम्ही जेव्हा YouTube उघडता and you start playing a particular thing, it plays at a normal speed. Now, while it is playing at a normal speed, at times I may get very fast. So a normal speed is assumed to be 1. So if you want, I want the speaker to speak at a slower pace, what you can do is you can reduce it to 0.75. You want it further low, you can reduce it to 0.25. On the other hand, you say ki nahi, हे सगळं माझं झालेलं आहे, मला fast पुढे जायचं. You can increase it to 1.25, 1.5. The max you can go is to 2. This is one thing. Then another thing is the quality of the picture. You'll see that you can vary it from HD quality. Now, I won't recommend HD quality basically because it consumes a lot of your data. You use HD quality only in case you need a photograph of a particular slide in that particular screen. Otherwise, you can come down to a lower pixel size also. So these are a few tips that I would like to share with you all as far as going through our YouTube lectures were concerned. I'll try to come up with the list of lectures that I have posted up. I'm not very sure whether I would be in a position to, because my YouTube channel has a mixture of a variety of lectures. I'll try to put them in one folder, and if I am able to do that, I will obviously pass on the message to you all also. With regards all that we had done today, yesterday, the story of how weather forecasting, the need of weather forecasting, how it is done in the present scenario, what are the methods with which weather forecasting tends to be taken up these days is what we have done. In case you have any queries, you can ask me your queries. If not, then fine, we could call it a day, and in a couple of minutes we could stop this lecture. Yeah, if you have any queries, you can ask me your queries.